Hello again, everyone. Yaksamash. Welcome to Wrench Reads, Trilogy of Morgalla, Diary of a Lonely Demon, number 2. John David's writing style has, of course, failed to wow me last time, and I doubt it'll do so this time around. So again, if you want a copy, there is a link in the info bar. But before I start, I'd like to give a few kind of brief shout-outs to several others who are neck deep in the reading of this book as well, or have finished reading this book and have reviewed it non-positively. Because that's the only real review that I've ever actually seen of this book who actually knew what they were talking about, or have actually read the book. This shout out includes someone who showed up in my comments section to the other video this previous week. But there's a number who have actually taken on John's book, and each page that I will be linking is worth the look. And of course, links will be in the description box below. A couple of them, Hana Bakemono, Ali's Ravenous Female page, Angelica Aswald's Tumblr. These are all Tumblrs thus far, by the way. Toxic Rants Tumblr. She did a fantastic monster review. At least I hope that was her, because a couple of them I'm not really all that positive. I'll link the video as well. But also, if you haven't already, make sure you drop by the Morgalla Sucks Facebook page. And of course, all of this stuff will actually lead you straight into John's dirty internet laundry. So start there and have a look. I mean, it's the more people see John's work, the more people see John's dirty internet laundry, the better. That's kind of my goal here. But I'll get to more into the actual laundry as it relates to this book in the coming readings. So again, thank you, Hannah, for your comments, and I hope this reading is just as good as the last one. I bet that's all I can really hope. Okay, now the shoutouts are finished. If this I have to say this, if it's the first one you've watched, if this is the first one that you've watched, click the link in the annotation and go back to the intro, start there. So, right, where do we leave off? Morgalla pulled a Batman stunt on Baladon, and she's going after the other Vindicator, Vindicator X2, taken by the demons. What happens? Well, let's find out. They had barely made it home with their prize intact. Limbs were lost, but they were already regenerated, though the aches were still there. They all felt lightheaded from the blood loss as well, but that too was already being replenished. Okay, so that's a bit of an indication as to some of the powers these demons have. They can regenerate. A healing factor. A bit short of Deadpool's healing factor, but, well, I digress. Let's see. They all felt lightheaded from the blood loss as well, but that too was already being replenished. It would all be worth it when their master saw what they had brought him. A trophy. A trophy from Baladon, a symbol of what its people had fought and sacrificed for. Even though the planet was lost and was now safe from the hordes of hell, no other world could get it. There's a couple of different things here. Due to the fact that the demons are talking about the Vindicator, no other world could get it. I assume they're talking about the Vindicator. But in context, no one else could get Baladon. So, yeah, I don't know which to go by there. So, I mean, it's a small bit of sloppy language. But anyway, I'll continue. They brought the device in, setting it on the stone floor. The room seemed to be filled with nothing but junk and dust. It was a place where things were stored and quickly forgotten. That doesn't make sense. Why would you, if they were going to show the Vindicator immediately to their master, why take it to somewhere where things were stored or forgotten? Doesn't make sense. They wiped the blood away from the housing, exposing the words Vindicator X2. Some of the demons collapsed from exhaustion. Only one remained on his feet, and he approached the prize they had attained. Some more sloppy language there. Some of the demons collapsed from exhaustion. That implies that not all but one collapsed from exhaustion. Again, it's sloppy language. It would have been better another way, but yeah. He grinned and wiped the sweat from his brow. We assume this was the last of the standing demons. His attention was then drawn to the doorway. A small figure stood there in shadow. He could not see this person's features, but could smell that it was a female. Apparently they don't shower in hell. Though his appearance was monstrous by normal standards, she looked upon him without fear. And though he could not see her face, he already knew who she was. Again, I could break down the several things why this particular sentence is just absolutely, it's garbage. I'll be blunt. You start from her perspective. Though his appearance was monstrous by normal standards, she looked upon him without fear. That in itself is a sentence, a full sentence. But then it commas into the second part. Though he could not see her face, he knew who she was. So just two sentences that could have been cut in half. The other thing was how John describes this demon character. His appearance was monstrous by normal standards. What normal standards? Normal demon standards? Normal human standards? And what is monstrous? Monstrous to me is something different from monstrous to someone who's read Stephen King's It. I mean, this guy could look like a monster clown, and no one really could tell the difference because you don't have any description of it. So, again, a point in this book where this one strand of hair just doesn't want to go away. One point in this book, or another point in this book, where you just don't have good description of the characters being discussed or actually taking part in the story. But again, let's continue. More importantly, he knew who her father was. She stepped into the light and removed her hood. He was a bit surprised. Though he had never met this person before, he had heard stories and rumors about her. He had heard her name and of how skilled she was with a blade. I could go into a marauding demon race, raping and pillaging, utilizing swords. But nitpicky. I will not do that. Not this time. Strange, though, she looked completely different from what he had imagined. This is in italics. Her skin is orange? I thought it was red. Weird kind of point there. You don't know what these implications of this different skin color means. I mean, could red be a warrior class or warrior caste? I don't know. Never explained. Hi there, she began with a bright smile. Any of you speak English? My eyebrows rose just like that when I read this. I do, the Alpha answered, though his English was broken and heavily accented. I'll do a Russian accent for him. Oh, good, she said with relief. I don't suppose you guys would mind giving that up, would you? I could also go into why the heck are they talking English in hell? Why are they not talking hell speak? But anyway. The Alpha looked at the Vindicator and then back to her. He could not believe his ears. At first, he thought it was just Let me make sure I've got this. At first, he thought that he had just misunderstood her. He had a firm grasp of the English language, even though he had to repeat the words in his head. He snickered and bellowed out a translation to his comrades, who all joined him in laughter. What did he translate it to? What language? Did he translate it to Hellese? Did he change it to Baladonian? We don't know. But again, this is where you would put in like what hell speak sounds like. Because we're going to be seeing a lot of hell, what do the demons sound like? At least that's what I would expect if I was reading someone like Tolkien, who actually did a fairly good job discussing like the nature of Elvish. But I'm not going to go into that. But again, you really have no description as to what they're saying, even a phonetic translation. I'll continue. I'm not going to nitpick. He then said something else, and they looked at her with bewilderment. Hearing her name, we still don't know what they said. Hearing her name, Morgalla, at the end of the sentence made it clear what he had just done. This is in italics. Crap, now they all know who I am. This, the Alpha said, pointing his sword at the device, is a prize for our master. He will reward us. or kill you for reminding him of the failure on Baladon. She tried to convince him to see things her way. But of course, the demon actually has it right here. This device won a group, or a people, their freedom from hell. Why would he not praise them heavily for at least giving them a chance to figure out what they'd done? And, maybe how to actually, sorry about that, how to actually counter it, to get back at Baladon. Because if you could get back at a group that thought they were safe, you would do it. And you would laugh as you crush them beneath your boot heel. Anyway, I do not think so. I think you should give that to me. She was concentrating now, using every skill she had with her abilities. Again, incredibly nondescript. We don't know what she's doing. Is she using power of the Force, as in mind control, force mind control, or suggestion? We don't know. Take it, he demanded, as he held his blade to her. Didn't point it at her, didn't put it into a defensive posture, held it to her. Again, it's a sloppy language. Hearing his dare, 3 of his friends stood. Though weakened by the morning's ordeal, they would be damned if someone was going to take the spoils of their hard-fought victory. They all rose to their feet and drew weapons as they approached. As they approached what? Morgalla, I'm assuming, but as they approached her? As they stepped between her and the Vindicator? Again, we don't know. It's just more sloppy language. Guys, I don't want any violence. I appreciate what you did, going through all that trouble and all, but I need that. Need is in italics. Then you will have to take it from us. Bad Russian accent. Sorry to my Russian viewers. This depressed her. We'll get more to why this depressed her in a bit, but I'll get to why it doesn't work for this story here in a second. The first to strike came forth, and his death was immediate. Beneath her cloak she hid 2 weapons that she had hoped not to use, but was forced to, as she was most every day. I'm going to read that sentence again because it is kind of unusual. Beneath her cloak she hid 2 weapons that she had hoped not to use, but was forced to, as she was most every day. Again, sloppy language. Could have been written just a little bit differently so it flowed better. And the last section, as she was most every day, there's a hyphen between the previous part of the sentence and that. So, yeah, take it for what it is. She ignored the first. She could tell there was no more life in him as his body fell. Her attention was now on the next in line. The second opponent fell almost as easily when her blade cut through his neck. It was a cut worthy of a surgeon. 2 things. First, Morgalla is skilled with a blade. If Morgalla was skilled with a blade, she would know that a slicing weapon does not do bone very easily. She would have cut an artery, done something that killed him but didn't necessarily go through through bone. Severing the vertebrae is not as easy as it might seem. Don't ask me how I know this, I'm a history buff. Specifically when it comes to medieval sword and shield warfare. The second thing was, we don't know how the first one died. There's no indication as to how he actually went down. Whereas the second one, he says, John writes, that her blade went through his neck. We don't have that indication to the first one. He could have just had a heart attack. We don't know. So, okay, again, more just sloppy, lazy language. I'll probably put a counter in the corner or something as to where I see this sloppy language. It would be interesting, and it would save me a lot of time in the long run. So, we'll see. I'll see if it sticks around. Yes. It was a cut worthy of a surgeon. The Alpha put up a fight, their blades clashing. Using the Vindicator as a shield, she leapt over it, and then kicked the device into the Alpha's body. We don't know how fragile this device is, but apparently not enough. Excuse me. He fell back, and his third friend charged forth with fierce determination. Her weapon was hurled through the air and found its mark, impaling itself in his skull. We don't know what she threw. It could have been a knife, could have been a throwing star, could have been any number of things. We don't know. But it impaled itself on her skull, or in his skull, and the third demon went down. That's not actually something that says the third demon went down, but we have to assume it because this guy's been impaled on something. You would assume he'd go down. You have to assume it. When it comes to John's writing, you have to assume. Which, okay, I could go on a tangent there, but I'm not going to. The Alpha leapt upon the Vindicator, more determined than ever to defend it. Their fight continued throughout the room and over the corpses of the other demons. She was not only fighting for the key to her future, but for her very life. He was determined to kill her, so much so that there would be no changing his mind. Her battle was for survival. There was no hate in her face or movements. If this character knew anything about Morgalla, as a character, as the fact that, he knows that she's good with a sword, he would be fighting for survival as well. He would be fighting for the prize that he would take back to Zorash, the Vindicator. He would be fighting for that. But again, and this actually kind of gets into the first bit of another real problem that this book has. It is only from one point of perspective. Morgalla, and then I'll not spoil anything other than saying the character of the next character, the male lead, Jasper. Everything is done from one of their perspectives. You never actually get it from the perspective of the others, of the non-me. Like this Alpha is the example. The Alpha is the enemy. You never get why he might be fighting, the nuances of why he's doing this fighting, why he doesn't run, why he would rather die or risk dying than let the Vindicator go. So again, I'll leave that. It'll lead up to it when we get there. Yay? Okay. Yeah, her battle was for survival. There was no hate in her face or movements. He thought for a moment that he might have victory in his grasp, but it was short-lived. As with many opponents stronger than her, she gave the false impression of dominance. The false impression of weakness, I think, is what he was going for there. Sloppy language, again. Then, at the first sign that her opponent's guard was down, she would strike. He felt the cold of her blade pierce his flesh and go into his heart. His life ended before his body struck the stone floor. And this is where we get to where John's writing style kind of drives me to drink. And not just coffee, either. That was a combat scene. That was a fight scene. That was two characters or more locked in mortal combat. Morgalla fighting the Alpha. You have all of 2 or 3 sentences talking as to how they're fighting, what they're doing, like their movements in combat. Morgalla is apparently this really strong sword-wielding character, or very talented, good sword-wielding character, I'm sorry. And the Alpha must be as well if he's able to stand against her for more than 10 seconds. But you never have a sense of urgency, as you would in a lot of combat scenes. You never have a sense of there's a risk to the main character and therefore the story. And due to that fact, you really don't invest anything in this character of Morgalla. There's no risk, so there's no emotional tie to this character. But we'll get to that. There is an actual attempt for emotional draw, but again, that's later on in the section. So, yeah. And this is the next, starting... His life ended before his body struck the stone floor. Demons usually die the same way. That's the start of the first paragraph. Or the first sentence of that paragraph. Sorry. Once their life ended, the body would cease to exist as well. Their bodies cannot exist without a soul. No discussion of what a soul is. Some demons have been known to explode or crumble to dust, where others have the rare distinction of turning to stone. Most demons melt when they die. Their physical form usually leaves nothing but a disgusting black puddle. Nothing is left of their body, not even bones. What possessions they had on their person become engulfed in a black slime. Or not, again, a little bit of sloppy language here. What possessions they had on their person become engulfed in a black slime, rather than becoming engulfed in the black slime. Again, most would not venture into it to obtain even the most valuable object. She looked down at their motionless bodies around her. In her heart, she almost apologized for their deaths, but it had to be done. No, it didn't. Morgalla's a talented sword fighter. She didn't need to kill them. Anyone who actually knows anything about sword combat knows that someone talented enough could have whacked the demons upside the head with the flat of the blade, not cutting. Bludgeon them into essentially unconsciousness. And apparently Morgalla has that kind of talent. She could have done this. But this is only the start of essentially John's attempt to get you emotionally attached to her. And again, that's coming. I'll start that sentence again. In her heart, she almost apologized for their deaths, but it had to be done. She approached the device and ran her hand over the silver housing. The tiniest glimmer of hope crept into her soul as she felt the cold alien metal. I'm talking to Allie directly now. The last three words of that sentence, cold alien metal, doesn't that just strike you as ironic? We'll get into why that's ironic for the other folks out there later on. As her hand moved across a panel, it came to life and opened before her. A screen appeared with an alien language written across it. It seemed to be intelligent and sensed her touch. A light washed over her, and the alien language was replaced by one that she could read. We don't know if it's alien. We don't know if it's demonic. We don't know if it's English. Again, nondescript. Something even stranger happened when the machine spoke. A roadblock came out of nowhere. Please enter access code. Oh crap, she said aloud. The Vindicator looked incredibly complex. Her hands went to her head as the blood pulsated within her brain in frustration. I'm going to read that sentence again. Her hands went to her head as the blood pulsated within her brain in frustration. Over wordy. I think the word is pedantic for what this is. Just it's overly wordy. It's unnecessarily complex. It could have been done in half the words with the same amount of detail. I'm not going to rewrite it, not yet. It'll take me forever to figure this thing out. The slain bodies around her began to melt, the life now out of them. They're dead, and they're still dead. In the Alpha's pocket was some sort of parchment. It looked like rolled reading material. At first she thought it might be a magazine, but that would be silly, though not entirely unlikely. We don't know why it's silly. We don't know why it's unlikely. I noticed that it didn't actually say Morgalla started to leaf through their pockets in desperation for the fact that they might have something to help her in this kind of situation. She just... It's almost as though John has reached through the fourth wall and has said, "Hey Morgalla, look down. There's something in his pocket." I'll keep going. There's a little bit more than I want to get through. She realized what it might be and snatched it up before the Alpha's body was completely gone. She opened it, avoiding the black slime on some of the pages. Opening it, she realized that the Baladonians had left the most important of tools, and her hope returned. So she opened it twice. 2 times she opened this book, this piece of reading material. They left instructions, and the Alpha brought it with him. The Baladonian instruction manual would likely be in Baladonian, much like the alien language she couldn't read in the very beginning. So this is a piece of convenience that she just happened to find an instruction manual in something that she could read that just happened to be carried by a demon, that just happened to find its way to her. It's all convenience. Again, critical, overcritical. The floor was now filthy with the black slime, and she felt bad. If she felt bad, she would have done her damnedest to not kill them. If she were still alive, she would have thanked him. His actions that day would save her life, but cost him his. That's not in there. She had to find something to conceal the device. She searched the room for a cover of some sort and found a tarp. Convenient tarp is convenient. Shelf space was scarce, but she got a brilliant idea. In her mind, anyway. That's in brackets. I don't understand where else she would get this idea. In her left ankle? The Vindicator was larger than her and weighed more, but she was strong enough to lift it. It was awkward to lift, but through her will she put it on a stone ledge above the door. Through her will, not her strength. She almost forgot her sword, which she had leaned against the wall. Her knife was lost in the sludge that coated the floor, and she wasn't going to search for it. She exited the room, looking left and right, her weapon in hand. When confident that she was safe, she sheathed it. The sword changed to a medallion and found itself hanging from a chain around her neck. So, let me get this straight. She sheathed the sword, she put it away, and it changed into a medallion around her neck. Just changed. There's no description as to how it changed. Did it flow? Did it turn into light? Did it just poof and go into a long chain around her neck? Again, it's not necessarily sloppy, because the concept is kind of cool, where you have a medallion that can change into a weapon. But it doesn't... It's not cool when you don't have a description of how it changes into a weapon, or the visual effects of it changing from something that's hanging around her neck to a weapon. But again, it's utterly overcritical of me, I think, in the extreme, to go down to, oh, well, how does it change? I should just give John a little bit more in the way of leniency. But, well, that's what I'm doing this. So to give you what's flowing through my mind as I'm reading this. And when I read, I'm fairly critical. So take what I say with a pinch of salt. So, right, that's the end of my reading. It's not the end of the it's not the end of the chapter. It's not the end of the section. It's actually just a paragraph break. But it is a paragraph break well enough that I can end this particular reading. So, what have we learned? We've learned that the demons melt when they die. We've learned that the Vindicator is colored silver. It's bigger than Morgalla. It can be pushed around without being damaged. And it's still completely nondescript. Aside from the fact that it talks to someone who uses it, you don't know what it looks like still. I mean, it could be the size of a fridge with a panel. You don't know. It's just hard to tell. Again, a nondescript weapon, which she put on the shelf, covered with a tarp, in this room that the demons just conveniently brought it to for her, that was out of the way, that was essentially a forgotten room. So, yeah. So we have a demon. Let's see how the demons die. We have her weapon, which is a sword that is changes into a medallion around her neck. We have... what else? I think that's pretty much it. You know what? I'm just going to call it. You guys, thank you for coming by. Thank you for listening. Oh wow, this is already a 29-minute video. So if I missed something, if there's something that you want to point out, put it in the comments section. Take a look at the links I posted below. Have fun. Take care. Na zdlarano, na zdrowie. Peace.